Winter is the time for evergreens to shine, and perhaps your garden space is looking a little drab this winter and you are considering adding some trees for visual interest, but evergreens just aren't really your thing. Well, have no fear. I have 5 deciduous native to Southern Ontario trees that will provide great winter interest but also year-round interest for your space. Hi, I am Christine. Here on Buying Thyme, we cover gardening in Southern Ontario and nature-inspired activities to get the entire family outdoors. I'm not going to pretend that I am an expert at Latin or able to pronounce most of the Latin names for these trees, but whenever you are dealing with native plants, the Latin names really are critical and are important. So I will make sure that they are all placed on the screen here so that you can jot them down, but I'm not going to mash them up with my unformed mouth. I'm also going to be mentioning the hardiness zones for each of these, and when I refer to hardiness zones, I am referring to the Canadian hardiness zones, not the USDA ones. The first tree we're going to cover is mountain ash, and this is definitely one of my favorites. It is a beautiful, kind of medium-sized tree that has great four-season interest with some beautiful blooms in the spring, a really nice dappled foliage in the summer, great fall color, and then these persisting bright clusters of berries that the birds will feed off of. And the berries are like a bright red to kind of orangey red color, and they're really striking and they look absolutely beautiful when covered in some snow and some ice, and they persist for the majority of the winter, and the whole tree helps to provide a really great habitat and food source for many birds. It is hardy from a zone 2A to a 6B. But one thing to keep in mind with any ash tree is the ash borer. So it is worthwhile looking into your area to see how much of a problem the ash borer may be before investing in this particular tree. The next one I think is one that everybody tends to think about when they think of winter interest here in Ontario, and that is the white birch. It's also known as the paper birch. It has really beautiful bark that peels and flakes. If you've ever gone on a field trip and learned anything about Indigenous cultures, then it is also known as the canoe tree. It grows anywhere from zone 0A to a 6B. Its main feature for winter interest is definitely the bright white color of the bark and the flaking texture that the bark provides. But it also creates a really nice multi-trunked branching structure that provides some more interest down at a human scale instead of all of the interest and structure being in the canopy. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this tree is that the bark will not turn white until it reaches maturity, and that takes about 10 years. So if this is a tree that you want, the best time to plant it was yesterday, but it is something to keep in mind where if you are planning ahead, this is great, but if you are hoping for instant impact, this tree will require some patience. There are other cultivars of birch and other imported birches from Europe that will give sooner and much quicker impact, but they are not native varieties. The sycamore. This one is also known sometimes as the London plane tree, an American plane tree. It goes by a few different names, but if you have ever seen this one in person, it's not a tree that you forget about. It has a really cool, almost army print style bark with these mottled colors of green, browns, and beiges in these blotchy sort of patterns all the way up the trunk. But this tree is not a small tree. It is a huge tree. So you do want to be very mindful on your property size and everything else that you plan on doing on this property before selecting this tree, because it is not a small tree. It is huge. So just be mindful of that. It is also, of all the trees that we're covering today, it probably has the smallest hardiness zone. It is really only hardy in and around the zone 5. You can find it in more temperate regions up to about a zone 9. But it tends to thrive and do the best in and around a zone 5. Oaks in general get a really good rapport for supporting wildlife, and the pin oak is no different. Pin oaks tend to be a tiny bit smaller than maybe some of the other oak trees and are often picked for landscaping because they have a really nice upright pyramidal structure. They have all of the features of an oak tree that we know and love, like the glossy green leaves that change a beautiful color in the fall, the acorns, but the leaves on a pin oak will also persist into the winter, so you won't be staring at just the structure of the tree. You will have that color and that rustle all winter long. Now, the pin oak does like a slightly more swampy sort of setting, so if you have a wetter area on your property, this may be a great choice. And in that, It also helps to support waterfowl for both habitat and also food. You'll also find deer munching on the acorns, as well as woodpeckers and blue jay. Now this one is hardy from zone 1A to a 4B, and it is often found in and around the Lake Erie region here in Ontario. This one is definitely one of my favorites, the eastern redbud. It is a beautiful kind of understory tree where it has a bit more horizontal branching instead of upright branching. You can also get some interesting trunk figurations with this, so you can have a single stem tree or you can have a multi-stem tree. And there are a few different options that will create more interest down, once again, at a bit more of a human gardener size scale. Now what gives this great winter interest is that it has these very interesting seed pods that are quite persistent. They'll last through most of the winter, and these seed pods help to, once again, provide food for birds, and they will also give some sound and some rustle as the wind blows. The horizontal structure of the branches also are really good at catching the snow and can create some really pretty architectural shapes as the winter months progress. Now this is another tree that has really great four-season interest. One of the things that this tree is probably most well known for is its spring blooms. It gives off this beautiful flush of hot pink blooms before any of the leaves come out, and then when the leaves do show up, they are a beautiful heart-shaped leaf, and then they turn a beautiful golden color in the fall before dropping off to reveal the seed pods. Now, like the other trees mentioned, this one does require maturity. So if you plant it right away, you are not going to get blooms right away, and you are not therefore going to get the seed pods right away. This one is a bit quicker though. It's going to usually be around 4 to 5 years on average after planting when you start to see blooms, and therefore you start to see some seed pods. But if you plant it right away and expect that instant impact, you're going to be disappointed. Now those seed pods are favored by goldfinches, but they are also tasted by many other birds as well. The redbud tree is hardy from a zone 5B to a 7B. Now if you love these trees as much as I do, and you would love to include one of them into your garden space, but you're not quite sure where would be the best spot and how to read your space properly, make sure to check out my video here on microclimates, and it will help to guide you through everything you need to be able to read your existing space.